Now, I know I did this exact same thing with 1:35 a.m., but I've kind of already read the Step Closer's Stitchwraith story. I don't have the book myself yet, but probably due to a Scholastic screw-up, Godzilla 813 on Imager already has the book, and they have all the pages from the story posted on their Imager gallery. Since this video is going to be a deep dive and analysis into the story, I highly suggest that you either check the link in the description and read the story for yourself before the book even comes out, or stop watching the video because this is going to be filled with spoilers and wait for the book to come out. The video won't really spoil anything but the Stitchwraith story, but it will connect to stories in the future, so let's begin. The story begins with a 9-year-old kid named Jake, who's realized he isn't himself. He knows he used to be a kid, but doesn't remember how he died. All he knows is that he is in this metal thing now, but he was sharing the space. He discovers this kid named Andrew is also occupying the metal thing. Andrew can't see anything, but Jake can see that they are in some sort of truck. Apparently, Andrew had been hurt by this guy, but he held on to the dude and wouldn't let him die when he should have. The guy's body was moved to this place full of cool stuff, where Andrew infected all of the things in the room. He jumped into this dog animatronic and found himself in the robot body that they are in currently, being shared by the two now. A man is handling the container that they are contained in, and freaks out when they move. Jake reaches out to the guy, but he falls to the ground as his body withers and black streams from his eyes. They say that this is similar to the guy before the truck unloader. Andrew says it was probably because of him, as he tries to scare people with a little shock, but they wonder if there is a third party in the entity. Jake then realizes that the other items Andrew infected may be dangerous, and goes on a journey to find all of the infected items. Now, that was a very brief description, but wow, this story actually blew me away with how many questions it answers and how many threads it links together. It may not have seemed at first that it was very important, but here's my explanation for everything that this story answers and what it's supposed to tell us. So, first of all, technically this isn't the first time we've heard of Jake and Andrew. In the description of Bunny, Call, and Blackbird, Jake and Andrew have their own stories relating to what happened to them before their deaths. In Jake's story from Blackbird, he is very sick in the story, and he looks back on the times before he was sick. One thing very important about this story is that in the investigation from Fetch, Detective Larson visits a house that was owned by a guy with a sick kid. A drawer in the house is just filled with scribbles in thick black marker. In Andrew's story from Bunny Call, we hear about something evil keeping a man with burns all over his body alive. The thing keeping the man alive is obviously Andrew, and it seems that this man must have done something bad to Andrew, possibly leading to his death. This basically confirms that in the next two books, these two stories with Jake and Andrew will be the ones connected to the Stitchwraith. So next, I think I need to elaborate on the anatomy and possession science of the Stitchwraith. If it wasn't obvious, the Stitchwraith is a Fazbear Entertainment endoskeleton that is possessed by two spirits, Andrew and Jake. But how did they both end up in the body? Well, it seems that they each came from objects that Phineas added to the endo. It's very likely that Jake came from the doll head added to the endo. The head is described as having details drawn on in thick black marker, similar to Jake's drawer covered in thick black marker from the investigation. I'm betting that this doll head was somehow involved in Jake's death, leading to his possession of the object and joining into the Stitchwraith. Now, about Andrew, it seems that he came from the Fetch Power module used for the endoskeleton. Andrew describes the burned man's body being moved to a cool place with a lot of cool things. This is obviously Phineas's room of haunted objects. Andrew then infects other items in the room, including a certain Fetch animatronic. If you recall, 1:35 a.m.'s Phineas used a Fetch power module for the Stitchwraith, so that's how Andrew became a part of the collective Stitchwraith. Now, how each of them became part of the Stitchwraith actually explains their role in the collective machine, since Jake, being the head, explains how he can see and is in control of all motor functions, while Andrew is the power module, being more internal, but controlling the collective abilities. This is just a side note, but this story may have given it an explanation for why the Endo is referred to as the Stitchwraith. It's just two spirits stitched together in one body. That, or the cloak is pretty stitch patchworked. But it's still a good symbolic explanation. Now, about the Stitchwraith's Wither ability, there are two viable explanations for how this happens. The likely option is that Andrew is Andrew attempting to scare people out of anger, but underestimating his own ability. This goes along with the human emotions being very powerful, and heck, even Andrew admits that it's probably him. He's a very angry kid and seems kind of vengeful with the world, so it would explain why he's trying to scare people, but just maybe accidentally killing them. But there is another suspicious option. It is very subtly hinted at that there may be a third entity in the Stitchwraith collective that may be in control of the deaths. My guesses are that either another story will explain the third spirit, or maybe the man that Andrew wouldn't let die followed him into the robot. It's just a theory for now. On the topic of the Withered Bodies, the investigation file explains that there are 5 confirmed bodies, and this story actually adds one onto the list. First we have Phineas, then the truck unloader, then 2 guys who tried to mug the Stitchwraith, and then one more that we haven't heard about yet. Now, one last thing that this story may link to is something discussed in 1:35 a.m. The latest we hear in the investigation is that the Stitchwraith was spotted at, quote-unquote, the old fire site for the second time ever. Before this, I had thought that this may have been referring to Fazbear's Fright or something, but this may actually be linked to the man with burns all over his body. This could very well be the place that Andrew and or the man may have died. Also, as a side note, the reason that the man's body was moved to Phineas's workshop was likely because of the fact that he wouldn't die. It was probably chalked up by the hospital as supernatural force, kind of. That would make sense. So, the last thing that this story leaves us with is the quest for the infected objects. Andrew had infected a ton of items while in Phineas's haunted room, and it was then Jake's goal to track them all down. We haven't seen many of these objects, but here are some of the possibilities we know so far. I know this for a fact, but the plush trap chaser from Out of Stock is definitely one of the objects, as the Stitchwraith can be seen collecting its parts. This is a big stretch, but maybe something to do with that mannequin torso from the first Stitchwraith, or maybe there's a haunted object at the old fire site. That's why it would keep returning. This is just something I'm adding in after the fact, but I think that Fazbear Fright's number... is it 7? I think number 7's description, we don't have a name. Oh, it's the Breaking Wheel. That's the name of the 7th book. I'll do a separate video on this later. But the first story, it's called Breaking Wheel, and the thing is, Phineas has a breaking wheel, which is an old torture device. So I was thinking, I think that the breaking wheel will be connected to the Stitchwraith, and that this breaking wheel is one of those haunted objects that Andrew had infected. But we'll just have to wait and see on that. On the topic of Step Closer, since I haven't read the other stories yet, I don't know which one will be connected to the Stitchwraith, but I have a pretty good guess. I'm pretty sure that it will be the second one, where a girl named Casey steals a pair of novelty glasses. I'm gonna bet that these glasses are one of Andrew's infected items. Also, by process of elimination really, story 1 and 3 seem more symbolic stories from the games, having story 1 being symbolic of kind of the Afton family, and story 3 referencing a girl named Susie, possibly reflecting the same Susie who possesses Chica. So, when the book comes out, I will have to check that. Also, one last final note that I'm adding in, because I thought a bit more and I made a certain connection. Stitchwraith is made up of at least 2 souls, right? That theory the other week, MatPat did, with the new kid, it was the idea that maybe Golden Freddy is possessed by 2 separate kids. I believe that this story has now confirmed the possibility, not confirmed it, but confirmed the possibility of that being true. Okay, I think I've just realized that this video might not make too much sense when it comes to, if you haven't read the stories yet, so very suggested that you go check the description for those, but here's just a brief overview. The Stitchwraith isn't entered. It's not Henry's suicide bot. It is 2 kids named Jake and Andrew who are on a mission to collect all of these items that Andrew haunted. So I think that's a pretty good description, and they accidentally killed Phineas. The Stitchwraith isn't a bad guy. He's just 2 kids. One of them being pretty angry and kind of bloodthirsty, but that's besides the point. So thank you so much for watching, and like the video if you want, I really don't care. Also, thank you to my friend Lacklust for the amazing drawings shown here that were used in this video. Make sure to check out their channel, Instagram, and Twitter for more amazing art and content. They have commissions open on both Instagram and Twitter, with all the links being in the description. I will definitely be doing individual stories or videos on each story in Step Closer, so stay tuned for those after the book comes out. And if you have any video idea suggestions, leave them in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.